Hello, I'm Minash Ravinsky and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has visited the United States, addressing the US Congress and sparking a certain degree of controversy, to say the least. The entire matter is controversial because, on the one hand, Israel has been attacked by Hamas. Over 1,200 people were murdered in their homes. However, the retaliation has, according to reports, claimed the lives of more than 40,000 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip. So it is likely that even though the US remains an ally of Israel, there is going to be controversies as to the degree to which Israel should have gone in order to defend itself against the terrorist attacks. We're going to talk about this and also the political implications of this debate with our guest today, Daniel Shadmy, spokesperson at ELNET Israel. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So what are your impressions from this visit? Clearly, there was no unity among members of the US Congress. There have been boycotts. There have even been members of the Democratic Party calling Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal on social media. So what is your overall impression here? Was this visit a success, or perhaps should it have been avoided, given the temperature of the political debate in the US ahead of the presidential elections?
So first of all, again, thank you for having me this morning. In my view, this meeting was very important, and this visit in the United States by the Prime Minister of Israel is critical. Between democracies and between two aisles of the political spectrum, let's put it this way, if everybody would agree on everything, we would have known about it. And there's always going to be differences, and there's always going to be more agreements between different administrations. But one thing is always important is to continue to communicate and to continue to discuss and to converse. And we have gotten to a point where it is critical to do so even better after 9 months of war. So it's important that leaders of each country, especially close allies like the United States and Israel, meet and discuss together. So there were controversies, as you said, between certain parts of the Democratic Party. But even within the criticism, I think the bond between Israel and the United States is so far unbroken.
So do you think that there is a risk that this topic could become the topic of the political debate here? Normally, it was really beyond any sort of dispute. Like, you had administrations on the Democrat side, on the Republican side, but they agree that Israel is a crucial ally in the region. And while there might have been some subtle differences, there has never been such an open debate. But right now, we have, for example, Kamala Harris. Now, she says she wasn't there because of a scheduling clash. So she did not participate in the boycott per se. She did not say that she did. Others have accused her of doing so. What is your take on this? What do we know about Kamala Harris's stance on Israel and the war in the Gaza Strip?
Let's start with your first question regarding her presence in Congress during the speech. The United States is the biggest democracy in the world, and is right now somewhat 100 days before a very crucial election. I think it's understandable that following Biden's dropping out of the campaign and the probability that Kamala Harris will replace him, interior affairs within the campaign of the US elections might have been the reason for her absence. I am not part of her team, so I don't know to confirm or deny. But I think interior affairs in the United States are busy enough at this stage. Now, regarding the presence of that issue in the political debate within the United States, I think this war has been on the spotlight of the world in the past few months, 9 months, since it has started. And it also has been one of the issues. For us being in Israel, we don't quite always understand why it is the spotlight of so many political debates so far away from here. We appreciate, obviously, the immense support that the United States has given Israel. And I think it is clear also in the minds of Americans how this is a common war against extreme jihadism and Islamism. It is, of course, any war is a disaster, and every death is also a tragedy. And so within the spectrum of how we end and how we solve, there are always going to be differences, even within Israel itself. It's not as only within the international arena. But the overall kind of agreement that there is between the United States and Israel is that Iran, that has been pulling the strings behind it, and Hamas, a terrorist organization, both of them cannot continue to be a threat to Israel or to the world itself.
No, of course, but the number of casualties, I mean, that is the main bone of contention here. While the initial response, nobody doubted that Israel had a right to respond if 1,200 people were killed in a style reminiscent of ISIS, right? I mean, this Hamas attack was like nothing before this. People murdered in their sleep, murdered at their homes. But later on, as the casualty numbers began to rise, there have been questions. Why so many? Why so many civilians?
Again, every civilian death is a tragedy, and I don't think we should always compare it in this way, because I have the luck to live in a democratic state where the government protects its civilians. There were mistakes, obviously, in October 7 and what brought up to this stage. But ever since then, we have Iron Dome, and we have shelters, and we have places to run when Hamas indiscriminately shoots at us, missiles. That's not the case of Palestinian civilians, where Hamas, who is in charge in the Gaza Strip, has been putting them in harm's way and used them as as human shields. I think the question should be is why hostages are being held in civilian apartments within big markets like the one of Nuseirat, where Israeli civilian hostages were held and rescued just a few weeks ago.
Unfortunately, the tactics of terrorist groups like Hamas are well known. One final question, because we're running out of time. Do you expect Donald Trump to maintain an even stronger support for Israel if he wins presidential elections?
From what we've seen from Donald Trump's statements before, and obviously he's not won yet and he's not president yet, but he's been calling for the end of this conflict and the return of the hostages. And that is something that we all are looking for here in Israel, is someone to, again, as President Biden has done up until now, is to support the return of the hostages and the demilitarization of Hamas.
Of course, this conflict is going to remain in the spotlight, both due to US politics, but also due to the fact that it is really this sort of tragic situation whereby a country has to defend itself against terrorist attacks. But on the other hand, the number of civilian casualties will no doubt give rise to many controversies among rights groups. And of course, we'll be covering the issue as more information becomes available. For the time being, Daniel Shadmy was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Nash Ravinsky. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us for more latest news and updates.